In today's video, we explore why we're set to see a bank run on the Fed. It's happened before and it's increasingly likely to happen once again. So let's dive on in. Now, this channel provides global macro insights for informed investing, so do consider subscribing. In a moment, we'll explore exactly why there is likely to be a run on the Federal Reserve Bank in 2020 and the years to come. But before that, let's just take a moment to understand the historical precedence of when this has actually occurred before. If we go back to the time before 1913, which was of course when the Federal Reserve was established, US currency before this consisted of copper, silver and gold coins. In addition, there were gold and silver certificates. No debt was associated with the issuance of this money. Yet institutions were apprehensive with their lending practices. They didn't want to lend out real gold, real silver and accept that loss. But the establishment of the Federal Reserve in 1913 gave rise to Federal Reserve notes and the use of these notes, which resulted in banks that were far more willing to actually lend this paper money. After all, losing paper money is nowhere near as hard to actually take as losing gold or silver coins. Consequently, home loans and other debts were granted with far easier lending criteria. However, under this system, every new Federal Reserve note was a claim on the Federal Reserve's gold. Thus, there was a need for the Fed not to create too many notes, given that there would be insufficient gold available in their vaults. On the back of the notes, it stated, "It is redeemable in gold." Yet these notes proved more convenient and were rarely exchanged for gold. Throughout the 1920s, the Fed embarked upon enormous credit expansion, and while faith in these paper gold claims remained, the Federal Reserve maintained the confidence of US citizens and of global money market participants at that time. Yet the Fed was clearly aware that they had insufficient gold available for all of the paper claims they had issued. This is self-evident from the change in terms of the Federal Reserve notes in 1928, which now states clearly on the front, redeemable in gold or lawful money. After the 1929 Wall Street crash, the dollar strengthened, and this was reflected by growing gold reserves at the Federal Reserve, where people exchanged gold for paper claims. This dollar strength was partly due to the size of overseas US dollar obligations and the need to make payments on these obligations. Perhaps not too dissimilar to what we see right now. But as the Depression wore on and faith in the Federal Reserve deteriorated, Federal Reserve notes were increasingly exchanged in favor of gold. The free market price of gold went higher, attaining around $26 per ounce, according to data from Macro Trends. And the Fed's gold reserves declined together with the dollar's strength. An out-and-out bank run was imminent on the Fed. This could not be tolerated, as the Fed nor the Treasury had sufficient gold reserves to cover all of these paper claims. Indeed, by 1933, the total face value of gold clause Fed notes issued prior to 1933 was equivalent to nearly 54,000 tons of gold, while records indicate that the total gold reserves of the country in 1933 were around $4 billion. At a gold price of $20.67, it equated to about 6,000 metric tons of gold. This gave rise to a potential shortfall as large as a whopping 50,000 tons of gold. And so it came to pass that Roosevelt bailed out the Federal Reserve with Executive Order 6102, possibly the greatest attack on civil liberties, at least until 2020. Now, this executive order forced citizens to surrender their gold, for which they were reimbursed the fixed gold price of $20.67. Gold was subsequently revalued at $35 per ounce, and an enormous transfer of wealth took place from private households in favor of the privately owned Federal Reserve. This chart shows the composition of the Fed's balance sheet, the gold run against the bank here, and the immediate impact of the gold seizures which sent their gold holdings vertical in late 1933. By 1934, the Federal Reserve notes were then accompanied with this claim: note nothing being said now about gold. And so what does this 90-year-old history tell us about what a bank run on the Federal Reserve could look like in 2020 and the years to come? Well, it's quite simple. It is a rejection of Federal Reserve and other central bank produced currency. Previously in this video, we've examined the Fed's assets within their balance sheet and identified how the asset quality continues to deteriorate. Unlike the Fed in the Great Depression, whose assets consisted of a very high proportion of gold reserves and short-dated treasury bills, today that asset quality consists of a very low proportion of high-quality assets. QE infinity has seen the Fed buying junk bond ETFs, and we're certain to see the size of the Fed's balance sheet reach double digits before long. But today, just like the Fed in the 1930s, we've seen vast increases in Federal Reserve notes. Such policies by central banks globally debase national currencies and cause a greater and greater proportion of the populace to convert their fiat currency into high quality, hard money assets. The Fed's current policies seem set sooner or later to create a gold, silver and Bitcoin run of this type that we have never seen before. This has every potential to be a run that will terrify authorities. Signs of it happening are already apparent. Consider gold's strong performance this year in a deflationary environment. Moreover, as Alistair McLeod has pointed out with regard to the COMEX futures market, the fact is use of gold and silver futures is being used to take delivery which was never intended. What we are seeing right now is unparalleled monetary policy where the Fed is simultaneously managing equities, the currency and the fixed income or treasury market. Any one of these areas collapsing will cause the ultimate run on the Fed. But perhaps the ultimate signal that we are already seeing a run on the Fed is the way in which central banks have lost confidence with paper money and are now net buyers of gold, as we've seen previously, we can see in this chart. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, do click the like button, support the channel by subscribing and check out these other videos right here. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye bye.